As Don mentioned, this morning's going to look a little bit different for this time. We're going to be looking at lament, particularly through the eyes and experiences of John Franz, who will be sharing two songs with us this morning, one to start and one at the end of our time together, and me and John are going to have a conversation in the middle just about lament, his practice with it, and what he's learned, and what it's like as a songwriter to share one's heart so vulnerably. And so before we do that, though, let's start with prayer. God, we give thanks for the gifts of this community and how we can learn so much from one another. We give thanks that you use us to be instruments of life and sharing and exploration, and that we have chances like these to come together and learn from one another. Be with John and I as we explore lament together. Be with us all as we listen intently to the songs that John has to share for us this morning. Open our ears, open our eyes to the power of lament and how it's important for our spiritual formation. And show us how it can help us live a life more like you. Amen. And I'm going to invite John up to lead and share his first song.
So, excuse me. The first song that I've asked Jen to play for you is inspired by Gretchen and me going to Washington, D.C. last summer to participate in the All God's Children March. That was a follow-up to the Mennonite Action that Audrey and Dawn participated in January, sort of in reaction to the events in Gaza. And just as a bit of a preamble to that, it's clearly what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank it's an affront. It is, I don't know, it's hard to think of appropriately horrific words to describe what's going on. And at the same time, I went to D.C. knowing full well the history of the Jewish people, most recently their experience with the Holocaust during the Second World War, but also, hundreds of years of persecution, pogroms in Russia and in Poland, that kind of thing. So knowing full well that they also have experienced horrific things, and for them, Israel is this last, hopefully safe place for them, and the tension between that, I guess in my mind, one of the questions was, if horrible things happen to you, does that justify you doing those same horrible things to somebody else? And how do we break out of that? Just the long-standing nature of this cycle where, party A hits party B and party B says, and justifies it by saying party B hit me before, but then party A hit them before, but then party B hit them before, and that kind of like infinite regression of anger and abuse, and how do you break out of that? And so this song, which is entitled Banners, is sort of a meditation on that experience and those thoughts that I had going to D.C. and the thoughts that I had coming, after coming home. Jen, if you'd go ahead and play that for us, please.
We carried our banners through genteel Georgetown, chanting and singing for a ceasefire now. We marched down to the gates at the Palace of Power, hoping our plea would be heeded somehow. On a mission of justice and peace we were sent. We gathered to utter our prayers of lament. We stood at the ramparts with uneasy allies who arrived at this place on paths different from me. Passionate souls with with raised fists and raised voices. With some of their rhetoric, I can't agree. While inside the walls, the faithful convene with their prophets' apocalyptic fever dream. Far away battles rage between ancient opponents, each wanting dominion from river to sea. Intransigent egos that will not be broken with their zero-sum politics, I can't agree. In between them are innocents, caught in the jaws of this endless struggle in which they are pawns. And if we go searching for how this all started, on all fronts there's plenty of blame to go round. On both sides there are more than enough broken-hearted. Everywhere an abundance of blood on the ground. I weep for the children who won't see the morning, for the ones who inherited this as their lot. I cry to Jehovah for an end to this madness. I cry into the dark, in the name of God, stop. So I'll live in the hope there's a better day coming, 'cause it's pretty clear Palestine won't be free till Isaac and Ishmael can dine at the same table under the shade of the same olive tree.
Thank you.
Johnny, I feel like this lament is almost truer today than a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that bridge, it's haunting. I weep for the children who won't see the morning, for the ones who inherited this as their lot. I cry to Jehovah for an end to this madness. I cry to the dark in the name of God, stop. July was the deadliest month in Palestine since January of 2024. And those numbers are rising in August. What's it like not only to write a song like this, but yet a year later for the song to be even more true today?
Well, it's sad. I mean, I guess, you know, you write these things as partially as a prayer that things will change for the better. And over the last year, we've seen, you know, the world change in a whole bunch of ways that are not for the better. You know, the situation in Palestine and Gaza is just one example of, I don't know, it feels like the world is sort of like spinning out of control. I don't know, it's I guess part of my reason for writing these songs, and you know, we'll hear another one at the conclusion of our conversation here, but it's a way of trying to like maintain hope. To some degree, I think having to write down lyrics in a structured form forces me to kind of come to terms with abstract thoughts that are going on in my head. And there's a way in which putting it down on paper kind of somehow makes the monster a little less monstrous, because, you know, it's kind of like the cliche about the movie Jaws, where you don't see the shark for like the first half of the movie, and that makes it so much more frightening. And I think feeling dread, feeling, anger, feeling fear, it throws you off. And for me, putting the words down is a way of somehow quantifying it and saying, here's the problem. Even if I don't have the solution, I can at least articulate what is making me angry, what is making me fearful, what is throwing me into disequilibrium.
As I've been thinking about lament all semester, one thing that struck me, and one of the things I wanted in this conversation, was at church, we don't practice communally lament very often. And yet, as Don showed, as you show, lament is just part of songwriting for so many people. So what is it, do you think, and why do so many songwriters gravitate to the practice of lament?
Well, I guess, there's sort of a standing joke in our family that, because I'm Russian Mennonite, I'm just naturally depressed about things. And Nina and I have this joke, too, that if I ever release an album, then what do we say the title would be? I have a minor problem, because so many of my songs are in a minor key. I don't know. I was moved, like when Don was reading those lyrics in his call to worship, I was thinking, obviously the idea that you can actually do this comes from somewhere. And I remember being a kid and hearing songs, from the civil rights movement, like Claire talked to us about. Bob Dylan songs, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and they affected me. They touched me in a way that more superficial pop music did not. Something inside of me goes, I want to do that. I want to be able to write something that will evoke that sort of emotion in somebody else.
Lois Ann sent me an article this week about Gazan young musicians who are singing and playing in the ruins of war. And it's a school in Gaza City that got destroyed, and so now they're taking their classes to the camps, displacement camps, and shattered buildings. And you see children coming together and they're singing the lines. They're singing these lines that you just can't imagine, like no fig leaf will wither inside of us. And one of the flute instructors said this, and I think this kind of resonates to what you were saying. I'd like to hear you expand on it a little bit more. When I play, I feel like I'm breathing again, as if the neigh is releasing the pain inside of me. So, I would like to hear about how exactly this practice helps you tap into that emotion and release it or process it, and maybe constructively use it.
Well, I was thinking about instances like you just described, and there's that famous back when the Civil War was going on in Sarajevo. There's that image of the cellist who took his cello to the ruined church and just sat down and played, even though there's all this devastation around him. And there's something miraculous, I think, about the way music can take you outside yourself, outside your current situation. It be grim, and yet in that moment, when you're immersed in the music, you transcend that. You step beyond it. So there's something holy going on there. And I guess, and I'm not going to claim that all of my songs are necessarily holy, and they're maybe not even necessarily good quality-wise, but I think when you get it right, you go to a place that is outside yourself. And I think one of the things that sometimes occurs to me as I'm going through this process of writing the songs down. First of all, you start from this place of, poor me, I'm feeling so bad, this kind of thing. But as you're writing it, you go, oh, but you know what? There's other people who have also experienced this. There's other people who have also felt bad. Maybe other people have felt worse, experienced worse. So I think that's part of it, is moving beyond the ego and, finding something more universal in this lament that you are voicing. But the other, and this does not happen as often for me, but sometimes as I'm writing the lyric, suddenly I'm seeing the situation from the perspective of the antagonist, like the person who, is my oppressor, the person who is my enemy. And I will write something, I'll go, oh, that's what it feels like from the other side. And, part of what I had a little bit of a problem with in DC was, we were so clearly advocating for the Palestinians. And sometimes that shaded into kind of this one-sided thing where there is no compassion for the Israelis. And that's not okay. I mean, nor is it okay for, the Israeli government to take this hard line that it's them or us. We're going to have to push them into the sea. We're going to have to clean out Gaza before we can be, neither of those perspectives is complete. Neither of those perspectives is good. So I don't know if that's answering the question, but.
Yeah, I hear you saying, it just broadens your scope. It makes, you draw yourself into yourself, but also out of yourself, to where you have empathy and perspective in a new way. And maybe not a holistic picture, but maybe a more understanding picture for everybody.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm curious, a lot of your songs are lament, not all of your songs are lament. Why did you, the Russian Mennonite thing and all that, but why do you keep going back to that genre again and again?
I guess that's where the most meaning lies. And maybe that's a sad comment on my personality. I have written happy songs. Honestly, I have. I've written happy songs. I just actually, on the occasion of Gretchen's graduation from university in Seattle last month, it occurred to me that I had written a song for Margot before we were married, and I had written a song for Claire when we dedicated her back in 2000, but I had never written a song for Gretchen. So I wrote a song for Gretchen, and all three of those songs I think are happy and positive. And there's nothing wrong with that, but yet somehow there's just more depth in lament. I don't know. You dig deeper, it's got more, I don't know.
It's harder and vulnerable, too. I would have to think that's got to be interesting to share something so vulnerable.
Well, as I was preparing for this, I'm thinking, I feel okay about sitting up here talking to you guys about this. And, you saw my lyrics, you heard my singing, you heard my music production. That's like making yourself pretty, naked. But my ego is, I have enough ego, performer's ego to go, okay, yeah, I think they might like that. So.
And I think songwriting, when I look at the biblical laments, almost the majority of the biblical psalms are laments. And some of them are very stark, with words that are uncomfortable. We get that in the psalm that, for this morning from Psalm 137, we have, happy are those who smash our babies' heads against the rocks. I like to see the psalm that Don read this morning. It's a psalm of resistance. and where the ending of that song with those really hard words are actually where they're singing. I kind of see the psalm this way, and this will kind of move into your next song. But you have the Babylonians, Israel's in captivity. Who knows the trauma that they experienced, having to leave their homeland, the physical, the emotional trauma. And then you got your captives mocking you, saying, sing us a song of Zion, sing us one of your happy songs. And doing so would be so re-traumatizing. It would bring back all the pain, all the hardship. That's the last thing that they may want to do, especially in front of the people who caused that trauma. And so at first they're like, we can't sing a song. There's nothing that we can bring forth, which to me seems really depressing, because singing is often how we process difficulty. And at the end, I kind of see the end of that song as resistance. They're like, fine, I will sing a happy song. If you ask us for a happy song, I will sing a happy song. But the only happy song I can imagine is for your destruction. So if you're going to make me sing a happy song, I'm going to sing about your destruction, because that's the only thing that will bring me joy at this moment, if there is joy to be found. And so, in many ways, I see him as subverting what the Babylonians are asking. You want a happy song, I'll give you that. You're not going to take away my ability to sing. And so this is the only way that I can find myself. This is what I'm doing. It's trying to find some ways to get a sliver of humanity in this deeply inhumane world. And I think I hear that in you. It's a type of resistance for you, a type of holding on to yourself, keeping your humanity and your dignity. So I wondered, as we move to the last song that you're going to sing, how, in particularly maybe that lament that you're going to be sharing, is some sort of resistance, or holding on in the midst of a place where it's really hard to hold on.
Yeah. So, kind of like by way of introduction, the second song that we're going to hear is entitled "When the Wolves Run the Show," and it is written not from my perspective, but from the perspective of maybe someone in American society who feels like they are finally at a moment where they are in the ascendancy. I'm going to just pull out some notes here, because this there was an author in a New York Times op-ed that describes this better than I can, and I want to get it right. So this is by a writer named Balint Magyar. I'm not sure what his nationality is. I think maybe he's Bulgarian. And this comes from a New York Times editorial in November of 2024. Magyar says, "Populism offers problem solving without moral constraints. This political movement promises that you don't have to think about other people." And so the song that we're going to hear at the conclusion of this is written from the viewpoint of somebody who is unashamed to think that selfishness is a virtue, that compassion is weakness, and that there are only winners and losers. If you're trying to cooperate, that makes you a chump. And so it is probably kind of harsh and unapologetic, and I don't know. My intent is irony, but I could also see somebody listening to this song and going, "Yeah, MAGA." So,
it is really stark. It reminds me of some of the biblical laments, with just the language that is used, and it made me curious about how you go about your songwriting, and I think about this in my prayers too. you know you're crossing a line maybe a little bit, but you're trying not to cross it too far and for a point in what maybe passes a little bit of that comfortability aspect. And yet it's part of what you're feeling and you're dealing with at the same time. It's this trouble of finding the right language, right? That we have as a preacher,
Yeah.
you have as a songwriter, and I don't know how you deal with that.
Well, I mean, some of it is, often, especially with these two songs, I'll have a blank sheet of paper and I'll just write phrases and words that occur to me kind of, I'm free associating. And, I don't necessarily have a melody in mind. I don't necessarily have a song structure in mind. And then as I think about them, they will like coalesce, and I'll go, here's two lines that rhyme, and they go together this way, and then it's kind of like, I don't know, like crystal formation almost, and you drop something into the supersaturated solution, and something kind of aggregates around the crystal and forms something coherent. And in the course of doing that, sometimes there will be a word, a phrase, an idea that I go, okay, that feels toxic. It's okay to be stark, but you want to be ultimately constructive. And so that's got to go. And even though, boy, that's a good line. I like that rhyme.
Do you ever keep it in there just because, like, that's the part where I have, like, what it fits, but it is toxic, and you're trying to figure out, you just can't find another way to say it. I don't know.
I try really hard not to, because you have heard me express criticism of people who go too far to one extreme. We're all in camp A or we're all in camp B, and we can't see the humanity of the other side. We see no room for compromise. I gotta think that we have to be able to recognize that even the person that you, okay, here's a harsh word. The person that you hate the most. Okay.
You keeping it back there?
Even the person that you hate the most. Well, okay. Something's coming to me here. Brad Eichsty said to me like a long time ago, 10, 15 years ago. And he had read or heard this from somebody else, but the way you feel about the person that you hate the most is the way you feel about God. And I thought, wow, that's pretty stark. We have to be able to see the humanity in our worst enemy. Boy, that's tough.
I wonder, for final remarks, for people who maybe have never explored laments before, maybe what are the one or two things that you've learned most in your spiritual practice of laments that you would like to offer people who may not be as familiar?
Wow. I don't know, I guess it comes back to that vulnerability thing, because I think there's, and perhaps with guys maybe more than with women, but there's this idea that you have to be strong and stoic and bulletproof, and you can't admit that something hurts you, that there's this thing that you can't overcome, and you're helpless in the face of it, as I think some of us feel in the current political moment. This tsunami is bearing down on us, and there is nowhere to run. And what do you do? And interestingly, and I don't want to open a whole nother digression here, but one of my post-retirement projects is cleaning up some family history stuff that's accumulated in our basement over the last 20 years. And I came across some writings from my grandmother who experienced the Russian Revolution, which was one of those instances where civil society was disrupted. The wolves really were running the show. Multiple packs of wolves kind of picking over the sheep. And one comment that has stuck with me, in the midst of all that, where they were truly helpless. There were instances where, one anecdote that's in those writings is my grandmother is with her much younger brother, and there's some anarchists are rounding up, I don't know, Mennonites, and they tell them to face this wall. My grandmother's expectation is that they would be shot, and she says, I can't. So she's facing these people, these armed people, and she says, I can't. If you need to kill me, but I'm going to face you. And she survived that, obviously. I wouldn't be here otherwise. But I think that sort of admission of just vulnerability, I have nowhere to go, I have nowhere to hide, essentially like surrendering yourself to God and whatever is going to happen. I don't know. That's what I got.
No. Thanks, John, and thanks for sharing your songs and your thoughts. I think lament is an exceptionally important practice for the people of God. It opens our hearts to ourselves, to new perspectives, and I'm just thankful for your willingness to show us an example of what that looks like today.
Well, happy to.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to ask Jen to queue up. Yeah, okay, so before she starts this, so the two videos that you see are my very first forays into creating music videos. And I was very proud of the effects that I incorporated into this one until I watched it again and I went, oh, there is some rapid flashing of stuff here. And I realized for some people that's neurologically dangerous. So if you are affected by like flashing lights or something like that, you might not want to watch the screen. But anyway, other than that, go ahead. Thanks.
You awoke this morning from your sleep to find our shock troops in your streets. You won't withstand this show of force. We are your new overlords. Just in case you haven't heard of all the new forbidden words, we'll dictate what you can say. If you don't comply, there's a price to pay. When the wolves run the show, when the wolves run the show, when the wolves run the show, when the wolves run the show. Eat or be eaten is the new golden rule. We will teach your children in Sunday school. The change of God has come to pass. You said it can't happen here, but it already has. You will know we've sealed your fate when we control both church and state. You will not know who to trust. The strong do what they like, the weak bear what they must. shore.